are live.
We're
Hopefully
early.
we're streaming to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Any confirmation would be good.
I'm checking LinkedIn.
I'm checking the Facebooky.
I think I just got a Facebook notification. Brent usually checks on,
Yeah, we're live on LinkedIn.
oh, we are, great.
Okay.
That is good to know, because we weren't before.
All right. So Tina, yeah, all right.
Ready? All right. so-
Are we okay on Twitter? Did somebody check that one?
I'm checking.
I can't, I don't have an account.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah, we're good on Twitter.
Okay, perfect, perfect.
Okay.
Brent, we're not holding.
No,
just-
he'll
gonna go.
come in when he comes in.
All righty.
That's what she said.
Ah. Okay, and Steve, you ready?
No.
Okay.
Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Oh,
¿Cómo
yeah.
estás? ¿Qué está haciendo?
Pretty impressive.
Party hardy.
Okay. I have to find the LinkedIn.
What's going on?
I'm just checking how poor we are.
Oh, don't get me started.
Don't do that. Don't do that right now.
I just said to my wife, stop watching, please.
Well, it's red.
Yeah.
If it's red in the background, it's red everywhere.
Oh,
Okay, here we go.
All right. All right. Mute is off, and we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
Hi, Steve Gillmor here. This is the Gillmor Gang, a rare Thursday appearance.
very rare.
Let's see. Joining us from Seattle area is Michael Markman. Welcome.
How do you
Michael.
do? Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's raining. This is definitely Seattle today.
From London, England, UK, is Frank Radis.
Steve, hi there. Hello, most of the gang. Tina, hello. How are you? And it's nice. Look, we're actually starting a couple of minutes early, which is not only is it Thursday, but it's early. So there you go.
There you go.
And wherever you go.
There you are.
Exactly.
And that was Erin Corey who said that first. Let's see. From Palo Alto is Keith Cheer.
And interesting you mentioned the UK there, Steve, because today is the elections in Northern Ireland, and the rumors are Sinn Féin will get a majority for the first time ever. And of course, Sinn Féin support a united Ireland, which would mean the United Kingdom would cease to exist.
What?
Well, there would still be a United Kingdom of Great Britain and Scotland.
That's called Great Britain.
Uh,
United Kingdom is the word that describes the inclusion of Ireland, Northern Ireland.
what about Wales?
Wales is part of Great Britain.
Oh, okay.
So no longer will I be able to put UK on the return address.
Well, Sinn Féin
Excuse
winning
me.
the election will
Excuse
not.
me. Let me finish the introduction. I had hoped to let that one sort of fade out, but it's still going. From the framework of Massachusetts is Dennis Pombriand.
That's right, Massachusetts, where abortion is still legal.
Ah,
Okay,
For now.
well,
Hold on.
I wonder what side he's on. And our producer and director, Tina Chase Gillmor. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi there.
Hi.
Okay.
And I think we should note for our listeners that Steve likes the framework of Massachusetts. That's the second show in a row where he used that designation.
No, I've said that repeatedly for about a month.
I missed it.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah.
It's sticking.
Well, there was the whole interregnum period. Is that the way you say that?
Regnum.
when we were off the air that I was saying that, every day when I woke up.
It was hitting the Commonwealth for a while, but it wasn't, I don't know.
Oh, that was the
surreal enough or something for you?
Yeah, it was the genesis of the framework comment.
Mhm.
And it's, so incredibly useless to even talk about this. But
I
nonetheless,
thought you were trying for Framingham, which is one of the towns in central Massachusetts, and I just figured I'd let it slide.
Central, I mean, when I went to school up there, it was the next town over.
Maybe you were in central Massachusetts.
I didn't think I was. Route 128, right around there.
No, it's west of 128.
Framingham reminds me, when I grew up, there were basically farms all around us and towns with names like Pickering. And there was a market that had pigs in it every Monday that they auctioned off, which as kids we used to go to just to watch. And Framingham kind of conjures up that feeling to me. It's some kind of rural pig farming place.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's where Massachusetts is coming from as well. Not so much anymore, but yeah, farming communities. I mean, we have a lot of English place names like Swansea, which I think is actually Welsh.
Yeah.
And Framingham and Cambridge, of course, and Lexington.
And there's the big
that
clue, which
kind of
is
makes sense.
New England. New England is the clue.
There it is.
It's in the name.
What,
It's
Massachusetts?
in the water.
But what is it? Framingham or Framingham?
We say the ham. It's just about every town that has a ham in it, we pronounce the ham.
Whereas in England, it's Birmingham.
Birmingham.
Not Birmingham. Birmingham.
One of the things you have to
That's
keep
good.
in mind,
Follow the H, right?
yeah. One of the things you should keep
Frank's
in
in
mind is
danger
that
of-
the language, the English language that was deposited here in the 1600s evolved completely differently than what Keith grew up with, or what Frank hears every day. So there are words, the perfect past tense, such as forgotten, which I forgotten. Forgotten isn't, from what I understand, used in the UK very much anymore. It's forgot.
Yeah, mostly, yeah.
Yeah, but here in New England, forgotten is just fine.
I should have said, I don't know, I forgot.
Boy, I got to tell you, I am so confused, not only by this conversation, but by this language.
So the amazing thing about English is that it's only about 5% Old English. It's the much larger elements of English are Viking. Words like bairn for child is Swedish. French, obviously Roman, Latin, but the biggest of all is German.
A lot of German. And then there's smatterings of all kinds of things, like the word shampoo is actually Indian.
Oh wow, didn't know that.
We have two ways of describing beef. One is veal, which is derived from Roman or Latin, whereas in calf, which is derived, I forget from where, maybe Old English somehow. But we didn't choose one or the other. We use both of them now. So veal tends to refer to the meat, calf refers to the animal.
Now, I'm not going to make the statement that therefore we've been globalists for a long time, but
I thought you were going to make a cow joke.
Well, a lot of people say the first era of globalization started after the final defeat of Napoleon in 1815. Went up to the First World War.
Was that after the spice trail and all that stuff? I mean, India and China probably, and the Arab world were very much travelers, weren't they?
Oh, sure. You got the Silk Road and, Marco Polo's exploits. But we Westerners count we count civilization as when we figured it out.
Except for
Oh, when we figured it out again, because
figured it out.
it was also, there was also the Roman Empire, which was pretty expansive.
Truly.
We had to forget that first before we could figure it out again.
But you know what's
Yeah.
fascinating, and this goes back to the whole UK thing, is that the Roman Empire went up to Hadrian's Wall, separating Scotland and England, and it did not include Ireland at all.
No. No, the Celts and the French, the Gaels, the Gaels,
and the Scots.
hence the name Gaelic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be heading up to Bath sometime in the next couple of weeks. I'll tell you what the Romans left.
Or as the posh English say, Bath.
Bath.
A very nice place.
You don't have to be very posh to say Bath.
Bath. I can't. I don't take a bath.
Well,
Well,
So
you should just say geothermal, because those hot springs come from deep in the earth, and they've been warming Britain for thousands of years.
Yeah, that's what I intend to
the
spend some
letter,
time in one of those geothermal baths.
Frank,
Yeah.
the letter A in Bath in the north of England is pronounced Bath.
Bath.
In London, the A is pronounced as knee. It's like Beth.
So this is a lot of chit chat. Are you guys just like waiting for Brent? Like the show doesn't start?
No,
until
this
Brent's
is
here, or
this
what?
is a proof of the existence of God.
Excuse me, I have to duck out for a moment.
Waiting
Okay.
for Godot. We're waiting for Godot, otherwise known as Brent.
We're,
We're
Oh, he's taking a call on his watch. But
you know, that's so Dick Tracy.
somebody should tell him that you don't have to put it to your ear. It works without doing that.
It almost looks like he's eating his arm.
why does he stop his video?
It's so Dick Tracy. I don't know. I like it. I think it's pretty cool.
Over and out.
There we go.
So let's talk about something that's not so consequential, like the Supreme Court.
Oh yeah. Not.
Hey, look,
Wow.
Brent.
Well, the biggest question I have in my head, and
Hang on, let's say hello to Brent, because we haven't
Oh, is Brent
introduced him
here?
yet. Hello, Brent,
Hello, you guys.
coming to us from Georgia somewhere near Atlanta. That's all we know.
Parts unknown.
Yeah. All right. Well,
That looks different.
haven't missed much, Brent, because there's been a lot of chit chat as people have been waiting for you to come in. I think the show only starts when Brent is here. So here we are.
That's really a sad statement if that's really the case. So
Well, we
Yeah.
need to be sure somebody's listening.
so
That's
Brent,
okay.
how do you pronounce the word Bath?
the way you just did,
Go on, say it out loud. I want to hear it.
Bath.
No, that's not the same. Bath. You said Bath. You had an extended A.
All right, I'm getting ready to hang back up.
Beth. Hello, Beth.
When you watch when you watch
Back,
the
back,
show
back.
back, you'll realize the pertinence of the question.
Where'd Steve go?
I don't know. He's somewhere
Like
around.
taking a vacation.
Nice. Steve's
I'm relaxing
Oh,
in the proof of the existence of God theory.
I have a feeling.
Steve is pulling a Dennis
It's-
Pombry on in the
This
conversation.
is proof
Ben
that
and-
reality is completely formless and random.
I don't know. Is Michael talking to his watch?
Yes, he
Michael's
is.
talking to
Yes, he
his wife.
is.
Okay.
But he's got a very quiet voice, so he has to put it close to his mouth.
He's
I'm going to do that for the rest of the show. Does it have to be an Apple Watch? This is like a Seiko. Does that count?
No. But back to the Supreme Court. My question is this. Logic would say that because close to 70% of Americans support a woman's right to choose, that this decision will backfire on whoever's behind it and result in a much better showing for the Democrats in the midterms. Do you think that's
I agree with that.
Yes, and there have been allusions to 2018 and 2020 when similar things happened vis-a-vis Trump and especially independent women joining the Democrats to provide majorities in the House and ultimately Joe Biden's presidency. But that doesn't solve the problem. The problem of a truncated right to abortion, and more importantly, a truncated right to privacy, will still be there.
So what does it mean that Adam Schiff said this afternoon, late this afternoon, that he was going to propose some bill that would assure the rights of women who are looking for abortions, and that he would bring it up to the Senate tomorrow, maybe? Has anyone heard that? Or did I?
It was in the t.me/Gillmor gang just now. I can't remember.
There you go.
I don't remember who posted it, but
Wait a minute. I might have posted it.
if the Republicans are smart, wouldn't some of them support that in order to get rid of the negative impact on the midterms?
It sounds like some of them are. Also, there was another story that I read that did say exactly that. But it's funny to hear all of this conversation and then see what happened in Ohio.
Yeah.
It feels like it didn't matter there. On the other hand, I mean, if you combine the other two candidates, the two Republican candidates who were involved in that primary, if you combine their numbers, they beat Vance by a pretty handy margin. Yet everyone is giving this win basically to the former guy.
Well, Ohio, and I'm going to be in grave danger of showing my ignorance here, but I think of Ohio as the core of the Rust Belt and the white working class that is aggrieved, that doesn't feel the Democrats have given them anything they can get, feel good about. And so it is a stronghold of the former guy. And so in some ways, you wonder how indicative it is. It's clearly, it means that there's a residual problem of the white working class and their connection to America. That's obviously deep and structural, that no one's yet managed to find a narrative that changes that, or a path that changes that.
So I've been watching North Carolina television here in the UK, and the commercials that I'm seeing for the Republican candidates are primarily they don't offer any solutions to any problems and make a lot of connections to the former guy. I'm wondering if that's, are you seeing that in Georgia? Are we seeing that with the Republican candidates all over America? I don't know. It just seems to me that seems to be the direction.
Generally, I think you're right. I haven't watched a lot of political ads, but it is my impression that the Republican Party is running against things, but not for anything, and that's something that they're known for. They've been doing for years. So in some ways, it's not significantly different. Keith, I agree with you. I think the primary results in Ohio were already baked into the cake.
Well, were they 4 months ago? I'm not sure they were. I mean, it seemed like the cake
very
took a
left,
long time
very
to
right.
make.
No, but the cake is baked. But if I was, an active member of the Democratic Party, I'd want to figure out how to unbake it, and that needs some kind of a way to address the white working class who have no real prospects of the old industries coming back. You need some kind of a narrative for the white working class.
Do you think that Biden made a mistake today by calling out MAGA the way he did? It seemed like my initial reaction when I heard it was, oh yeah, go get him. And then, a couple of hours later, after giving it some thought, I felt like, geez, that might not have been the best thing for him to do. I don't know. What
Right, can you give us a little context on what did he do?
so he said, that they were
The most right-wing thing for 100 years, basically.
yeah, it
It's
was something
radical,
like
yeah.
that. It whatever it was very strong. I remember.
Extremist. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, he made the point that MAGA isn't mainstream.
Yeah.
But it's so close to being 50% that there is some danger in both putting them on a pedestal and naming them by name is already questionable strategy, but then calling them the most extreme thing when they're such a large percentage means that there's bound to be some more moderate people who get offended by that label.
So my sense then is that, all of a sudden there's this opportunity for the Democrats to do something with the Supreme Court, the possible ruling on the one hand, and then the immediate destruction of the good that could help with the Democrats by the leader of the Democratic Party. It just seems like, what is going on? I was talking to my wife about this afternoon. Politics in America has I don't know. Maybe I just never paid as much attention to it as I am now. But politics in America has never been like this. Never been like this. And I've covered politics for, I want to say a generation. Since 1972, I've been involved in covering it as a journalist. And I was always passionate about it. But everyone is passionate about it now. I'm not sure I've ever seen it like that before.
Oh, well, maybe not in your lifetime, but you go back to the 1930s, just as an example, and you see plenty of examples of that with people like Huey Long and Father Coughlin, very arch conservatives, roiling. Yeah. What I think you're seeing is that the United States has had a very long honeymoon after World War II, as the greatest generation matured and lived its life, and it's come unwound only very slowly. And what we're seeing today is, frankly, not a lot different from what I could point to in the Federalist era, just after the Constitution was ratified. So this kind of thing is part and parcel, I think, of American life. We're just not familiar with it. We don't know how to deal with it. And Keith, to your point, I would say it's a generational thing. So we're not going to solve this problem really quickly. What we need is a charismatic leader of the John Kennedy ilk to at least put a few fingers in the dike.
The interesting thing to me, just to kind of weave this back to the Supreme Court thing, is we've been a bit complacent, haven't we? Because the Supreme Court, in a way, the draft judgment has a little bit of right on its side, insofar as it argues that the judiciary isn't the place to determine law. And pushing it back to the legislature, you kind of wonder whether our generation missed an opportunity to take that Supreme Court decision and make legislation that enshrined it at the time when that would have been more easy to get done. And it's almost like the politicians have avoided it because they're too scared of the issue, and now they're going to be forced to deal with it.
No, I think you're absolutely 100% spot on right. There was an opportunity to codify it in law, but I would also say this: if you're the Supreme Court, you really only should have one opportunity, one swing at the pitch. Once the pitch is in the catcher's mitt, you can take all the swings you want. It doesn't matter. You can't. The biggest principle at stake now is, can you pack the Supreme Court and get any ruling you want eventually? The answer to that should be no. The constitutional approach should be and should have been 50 years ago. If you don't like the ruling, get active in the political sphere, try to float a constitutional amendment reversing the ruling. It's not pack the court and do it again. This is what Einstein was referring to when he said the definition of insanity is running the same experiment, expecting a different result.
So what do you think? Does the woman's right to choose need a constitutional amendment, or can it just be legislation?
That's a good question. That's sort of what I was asking about what the Senate is planning on doing. Would that actually make any difference?
I think it must be possible for it to just be legislation, although it's a lot stronger if it's a constitutional right, of course, but maybe harder to get done.
Well, understand this: that Roe v. Wade did not make abortion legal. It only provided that there is a constitutional right. Each state, as you see right now, about half the states have already passed laws that would go into effect if the outcome of this ruling is what we think it's going to be. It's the states that determine the legality of something like abortion within their jurisdictions. But a greater question, a more fundamental question, is what happens to the right to privacy? Because Alito's text seems to indicate that he doesn't believe there's a fundamental right to privacy.
Well, that's even bigger. Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
Well,
It's even bigger.
So I apologize for my ignorance, but can somebody just explain what Roe versus Wade says on the matter? What is it? Is it an explicit woman's right to choose, or was it a fudge? Was it a clever tactical win that doesn't really establish rights?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I'm not a constitutional law expert. I could give you some ideas, but I don't want to hog the conversation. So very briefly, the Roe v. Wade decision said that in the penumbras and emanations of other parts of the Constitution, like the Ninth Amendment and some other things, that there is an inherent right to privacy, and that right to privacy extends to a conscience, a person's conscience about whether or not they have an abortion. And that, interestingly, that I think is what sparked Antonin Scalia's crusade to textualism of the Constitution. In other words, the Constitution says exactly what it says, and we can't deviate from it, because he and the Federalist Society and a lot of other people didn't like the fact that you could discover new rights in a 200-year-old document, which the document was clearly intended to do just that. Okay, I'm going to stop.
Well, I mean, logic would say that is a fudge. Then I'm going to say that is a fudge, because it doesn't directly address that a woman is allowed to determine whether or not she wants to give birth having become pregnant.
Well, here, let me read to you what I'm looking at right now. It was a landmark decision of the U.S. Supreme Court in which the court ruled that the Constitution of the United States protects a pregnant woman's liberty to choose to have an abortion without excessive government restriction. So, in one regard, you're right, Keith, but in another regard, it seems like it does exactly what you were suggesting that it might not do. So I just think that what we're looking at here, to me, is I think it comes down to me to can anything be done about those two Supreme Court justices who lied to the Congress during their hearings?
No, but I think now that I understand that, and thank you, Frank, I think I'm going to become a very strong advocate of Biden leading a revolution for a woman's right to choose between now and November. and going for solid legislation that enshrines it within law as a way of doing the right thing, but also as a way of reducing the Republicans down to the hardcore, right to life, whatever they call it.
So, there was an interesting conversation earlier today I was listening to about how Biden is a staunch Catholic. So his personal and religious position is it's not for a woman's right to choose. It is that that life begins at conception. And however, he also is thinking about the global aspects of this. What does the American community think? And obviously 73, I think, % of America is pro this constitutional situation with Roe v. Wade. So I think that's also an interesting thing, because it follows suit with what you're suggesting, Keith. At the same time, it shows how one leader can have a personal opinion about something and not necessarily make that the way he wants to lead.
Do you think the Democrats would be united in supporting legislation that in support of a woman's right to choose, or do you think that they'd be divided and therefore it couldn't get done?
I think they would support it. I don't know. What do you think, Dennis?
Well, I think this is the difference between constitutionalism and statute. Originally, Roe v. Wade was written as a statute. It gave very specific breaks at trimesters about what could and couldn't be done. That was overridden by Casey in the 90s. So I think any legislation that happens now, in addition to making that explicit case, needs to deal with the fact that an abortion at 9 weeks is a different kettle of fish than an abortion much later.
Or an abortion that is a result of incest, or an abortion that is a result of rape, or all of those things, which seem to have been just thrown out. That baby was thrown out with the bathwater, so to speak. I just feel like this is it's fundamentally wrong. Look at what many of there's many American corporations that have now started to say that they will fly their employees to a state that will perform a legal abortion if they need it. And I think that's a very interesting development.
I think it's more interesting than it even appears, because I think it's a harbinger of the fact that number one, state government is largely ineffective these days, and people are beginning to look to their corporations to provide some of the counterbalance.
In the UK, by the way, Dennis, in the UK, the law is 24 weeks. It's an act. It's a 1967 Abortion Act that was modified a couple of times by acts called the Human Fertilization and Embryology Act. But it's 24 weeks. And the fact that that's so late indicates that it's really about the rights of women.
Yeah.
It's you should want to have a baby, and if not, have whatever. Now, it is the case that a doctor has to agree in the UK, and they typically use the mental health consequences of not agreeing as a way to give women their rights. So it is filtered through a medical filter, as you were suggesting. Might be the case with various things, Frank, but it really is a fake medical filter, because it's just because a woman can just say, I will be extremely unhappy if I have to give birth to this child. And that's
actually, some people might be able to cheat the system, but there are things. 24 weeks is the borderline of what's typically thought of as viability. There are some conditions that don't become manifest until much later in a pregnancy. For example, hydrocephaly, or anencephaly. And you have to do a much more complicated medical procedure in a second term abortion. But there are good reasons to have that option available.
You know, I'm sitting here watching a bunch of old guys talking about this and thinking about how many women out there are complaining that this conversation is happening primarily with a bunch of old guys.
Yeah, well, somebody accused me. Oh, it was Michael, being a white, what was it, a white male, something, heterosexual, and I think the answer, which is, it doesn't define me, means we are allowed to have opinions about this, but you're quite right. It'd be nice to hear what Tina thinks.
Yeah,
Well,
Tina, are you there?
You know, I'm here. It's actually nice to hear you guys talk about this, and I don't mind old white guys talking about it.
You're married to one.
I am married to one.
And then Brent.
I haven't said anything, so keep
I know
going.
you haven't, but I'm
I'm not an old white guy.
I didn't want to exclude you, Brent.
Yeah, no, that was.
I don't mind being excluded for this.
You know, look, as far as the rights, I mean, I think the most women that I know, most women that I care to know, they want to be able to control their own destiny, right? As much as they can. And controlling our bodies and our health is paramount to that. So and it's a very just simple fact. You know, I'm a person, and my friends are people who think about these things very deeply. Many of us have gone through abortions, or maybe have had to at least contemplate it, or we've had to contemplate difficult pregnancies, or rape, any number of those things. I say I qualify in a couple of them. And it's, you absolutely want to be able to make your own decisions. We make these decisions with a heavy heart. I mean, these are not flip things that people do. So, you know, I mean, I just think there's no question about what we want. Doesn't everybody want that? What, you know, if every man would want to control their own destiny, control their own health issues, and not have the government butting into it.
I think that I think is it kind of gets right to the heart of it, and that is, you know, what does this say about how the government is inserting itself in health issues in America? We know that the government had to insert itself in the COVID issue, but does it have to insert itself in other things where it probably shouldn't be inserting itself?
I think.
What does that mean for other health issues?
I can see the government inserting themselves in this to make women's health care safe for women.
Doesn't sound like that's what their goal is here, does it?
Their primary goal is whatever you need to do for your health, we want to make sure it's safe for you.
Don't you worry, Tina, that of course you're right on that, but don't you worry that isn't enough, in the sense that what if you just don't want a baby and you're pregnant? It's not a safety issue as much as a choice issue.
That's a mental health thing, though. I mean, it's totally conceivable that a woman would say, if I have to have this baby, I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
You know, that's
well, people often do that even after they've had abortion,
and it's happened because they actually just want to take their own life. I mean, it's that, you know, having a child can be that monumental, whether you have to give a child up or you have to raise a child. I mean, it's a huge decision that rests on you for the rest of your life. So, Yeah.
Well, and then obviously, and of course, there's all sorts of mental issues that come to bear after a normal baby has been born that are also prevalent in our society.
Well, are you talking about childcare and how we?
All of that applies, and that brings to mind the fact that this legislation directly impacts and hurts the poor, and the disenfranchised, and the minorities in America.
Yeah, so I mean, what we're asking poor women to have more babies that they don't want or that they can't take care of, and that the government then won't take care of or help them. It's a very weird cycle that this government, wants to put its population into. It's can't understand it, really.
I don't think that we're going to solve this problem, even though Michael thought that we probably would.
Yeah, he had to leave because of a family medical.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
We're sorry that he couldn't stay with us.
So would anyone mind if I, because Steve's not doing it, put the brakes on this and made a right-hand turn to sports?
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't mind.
I don't mind at all.
Okay, well, he's back. I was going to say Twitter
Don't blame me for this, please.
for what?
For
Nobody-
changing the subject. I mean, you're going to change the subject because you want to.
Well,
It's not about me.
Okay. Thank you. What do you think, guys?
What about though?
Sure. Yeah. Well. Let's just, sure. Go ahead. I'm willing.
I mean, we could talk about this until the cows came home, and we're not the only ones talking about this in these kinds of forums. And I just, it just felt like, to me, as a former moderator of other kinds of programs, that we got to the point where it was time to put on the brakes and make a short right-hand turn. I don't want to do that if you guys think that we haven't discussed this enough.
Well, you can say we've discussed it enough, but I do think the implications of this for Democratic Party strategy could be central to what we might expect of the Democratic Party, and anything other than a winning response is going to be devastating.
I think you're absolutely right, but will the Democrats do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the political ramifications are, extraordinary. And
Well, let's stay with that for a second. What do you think the impact is of this leak on the Democratic Party's chances in November?
I mean, the fact that there was a leak in it, and
Well, there was a leak, and now we're in that world. So what
You
is
mean for the midterms?
Well, what Keith just said, I totally agree with, which is, there's this is putting the onus on Democrats, and not just women, but all people, to step up and talk directly about this problem, as opposed to hiding behind religion or any of the other framings that have fallen apart.
well, what do we need to do to get every Republican on record for how they would handle this? Do we put something on the floor? And
Well, that's
and
Chuck Schumer is doing that.
Yeah, and the Republicans are doing it, and many of them are sticking, either putting their foot in their mouth or backing away from it. I just think the Democrats, you're right, Steve and Keith, the Democrats have a chance and have an opportunity, and they need to grab that opportunity. And one of the ways to grab that opportunity, it seems to me, is to start thinking about how they spend their money in their advertising about this very specific thing. They'll have to turn on a dime and change whatever their thought process is right now and go directly after this. It kind of goes back to what I was saying about the ads I was watching in North Carolina. Don't even get near this story, other than to say, in the case of this one former guy, acolyte, that he's a family guy. And then he shows pictures of his wife and kids. Right after he's shown pictures of the front end of a shotgun.
Well, the thing about, I think that there needs to be a deeper conversation about what the meaning of family is. You know, that male quote that is often said in jest, happy wife, happy life. It feels to me as if family and happiness need to be aligned. Happiness is about choice, not just choice in fertility, but choice in general. The less choice you have, the less happy you likely are. And so a civilized society gives people maximum choice. Now it doesn't mean you can kill someone because you hate them. So there's limits, but within those limits, choice is the right outcome. And I think family and choice, the Republicans have been able to own family as a concept because there really isn't a progressive concept of family to compete with it. There's only an oppressive concept of family.
I think that's very astute, and I'm really glad that we didn't change the topic because we wouldn't have gotten to that point. I think that's really, that's key.
Okay, let me take the opposite position. I think the issue is that the Democrats in too many situations defer to the Republicans and let them define the playing field. The liberals, Democrats have a definition of family or definition of happiness, definition of liberty. It just happens that they welcome many more kinds of family types, for example, and we act like we're guilty about inclusion. And what may need to happen is for Democrats to simply screw up their courage and tell the world what they really think, what they really believe, and not back away from it.
Well, that is aligned with what I think, Dennis, as well. What you called inclusivity, I would say the word choice is a good alignment to that, because
I would agree.
So, and I think that, ever since Thatcher and Reagan, individual choice has been owned by the right. If you think about it, that was Thatcher's whole thing. There's no such thing as society. There's only individuals. And so individual choice is the right to decide stuff for yourself. And I think there's a progressive version of that would be very empowering to lots of people. Now, choice is constrained by economics, and then you get back to the Ohio Rust Belt white working class. So you can't just be about individual choice. You also have to be about economic progress. And it's how you combine those things into something that feels modern and future and worthy of buying into. Somehow that needs to evolve.
The word modern and right wing and republicanism just don't seem to work together for me.
Yeah, that's the Handmaid's Tale. That's
certainly what everybody is pointing at right now.
I would offer you another word. I would offer dignity. We've taken dignity out of a lot of the things that are important to the Rust Belt. It used to be you had a blue collar job and you made a decent living and you supported your family and everything was great. We took those jobs and sent them overseas. We made them less valuable, and we said, if you don't have a college education and you can't write code, what good are you? I think that robs a lot of people of their dignity. And I think one of the key messages is key ideas is how do you bring dignity back to everybody? And again, it's everybody. Everybody should have dignity.
Working hard was a part of dignity. Even for the coders, and working hard helps to establish dignity in your own psyche, I believe. But you're right, they've taken away the ability for people in the Rust Belt, many of them, to work hard. They have nothing to do. They have nothing to work hard at.
Well, if minimum wage isn't a living wage that you can survive on, there's no dignity for everyone working minimum wage. So, I mean,
That's why they shouldn't call it minimum wage anyway. They should call it living wage.
But I think we're missing some obvious. Yeah, that's fine. I can talk without being seen. It's my right.
yes,
Okay.
This is a choice.
Yeah, put up a
Thank you.
still.
it makes you
Picture
happy.
of a picture
So
of
Gilmore
like,
gang calling Steve Gillmor.
Yeah, he's right here. Always is. He's always right here.
put up a still of like Prince or something, and
So, as I was trying to say, if you look at what the Republicans have done legislatively and their strategy of not having any issues, just basically, blocking votes, blocking discussion on votes. That's their strategy. Their strategy is to remove the opportunity for the dialogue to take place. And the only way that that's going to change is if people vote enough other than Republicans into office. There is no other solution to this.
yeah. Do you think
So-
that in Ohio that even though that the Democrats could actually win in that Senate race against JD Vance? I was listening to the guy who was the Democratic candidate, and he sounds like he's a smart guy who he was a congressman. He's got some good ideas. I listened to
Tim Ryan, right?
Yeah, I listened to a
Ryan.
great interview with. He just seemed terrific, and I just it just seems like, oh gosh, if he doesn't win, what a shame.
I think if the Democrats embrace the progressive version of culture wars now, they can win in a lot of places that they were going to be challenged to win in before.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, Keith. I think right now we've got hot button issues that people don't think about. They simply engage the lower brainstem, and you got to find a way around that.
I think what we might find is it's hopefully the Democrats not only will come out with a very strong stance of their own, but be able to paint the Republicans as Frank was saying. He has a really hard time talking about the Republicans and being modern in the same breath. To paint them as old, archaic, backward thinking,
Dinosaurs.
we don't want to go backward. I don't think anybody wants to go backwards, right? We all want to go forward. And the Republicans, all their behaviors, as Steve was mentioning, blocking, this, that, they're just sort of standing up for who they are. And who they are is pretty backward.
I think you can look at the fact that they didn't even put up a platform at the last convention, and that sort of thinking is permeating still to this day the Republican Party. At least that's what it appears like to me.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about on a more practical level. It's, don't listen to what I say, watch what I do.
Yeah.
And what they do is they don't even want the discussion.
Yeah.
That's what they don't want. That's why Merrick Garland is the Attorney General, is because they refuse to allow him to go up to Capitol Hill and actually meet with people prior to, bringing it to a vote. The vote is the last stage. These people that are in power have already won the game. So the question is there any way of developing a majority of Democrats in Congress and the White House? Yes or no?
Yes, of course.
Okay, how does that go?
It can be a generational affair.
You gotta go.
You got to run, Brent?
Good
Yep.
seeing you, Brent.
All right.
See ya.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks,
guys.
babe.
Thanks for allowing me to have a significant amount of contribution this show.
I was doing the Vulcan mind meld with Brent throughout, and I can tell you he just loved this show.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I agree with Dennis.
I'd like to hear what he was about to say.
Well, it involves a lot of blocking and tackling. You gotta put the time in. It's not gonna show great rewards in November unless some absolutely horrible thing happens and people rally around Biden. What we need to do is have a long-term strategy. That is how we got to where we are today. The Republicans had a long-term strategy that actually goes back to William F. Buckley and the John Birch Society after World War II. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight.
Well, I do think, I think you're 100% right, but I do think that some explosive moment could also help to move that forward. And I actually feel like this Supreme Court issue could be part of that explosive moment. And another part of that explosive moment could possibly be the public hearings for the Jan 6 committee. If you combine those two things, I wonder if that might not prove to be an impetus towards what it is we're discussing, which might make a situation more likely to create more Democratic votes.
What's the estimate at this point of when the January 6th hearings are going to be televised?
June.
Soon.
June.
Yeah, June,
Okay.
next month. I mean,
So they gotta happen soon.
It might be just me, but I can't get excited about that. I almost feel like that undermines the Democrats by focusing too much on the past. Now, I'm not saying there shouldn't be accountability for what happened, but I'm talking now about electoral strategy, not legal strategy. It feels as if that is going to be the wrong center of gravity to win.
Well, I don't think you have to worry about that because it won't work. The Mueller report did not work. Explaining what happened on January 6th, everybody already knows what happened. The pictures tell the tale. So I don't think you have to worry about this being the wrong direction.
unless you have a John Dean moment. I'm not, you might be right, Steve, but I wouldn't want to completely discount it. I mean, remember how long the Watergate hearings were, and they lasted a really long time, and it wasn't until the tape went missing and John Dean's testimony, those kinds of things, those moments helped to clarify something that had happened a long time before it. So it was kind of a look back.
Yeah, but we had some patriots on the conservative side, like
That's true.
what was the guy who ran for president, who went up to the White House and said, "You're done," to Nixon. The guy who the atomic bomb commercial was against him.
Goldwater.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very
I mean, we don't have that.
No.
What I do think will be interesting is whether they succeed in drumming Liz Cheney out of the Congress, which I think will be very similar to the impact of this leak of court proceedings.
So,
because if they drive her out of Congress, they establish what is in effect a third party in this country. Right now, everybody on the Republican side is hiding because they don't want to be too visible to Trump.
Mhm.
But if there's no recourse to this, then there's the possibility of a center party emerging.
I know this is totally hypothetical, but what happens if there's just if there's no Trump suddenly? Does the party sort of then paddle around for their identity or their leader? I mean, obviously they wouldn't have a leader then, but I mean, he's not a young guy. Anything could happen. He could be incapacitated or die, suddenly from anything. So, I mean, what happens then to the party that is like so tightly hung on to him?
Trumpism has to die. It's not just its leader that might go missing. There's so much momentum built up in the party in the presence of people like Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott and a lot of other wannabes, JD Vance these days, that momentum is going to carry you through at least one election cycle, and it's only going to dissipate if and when people discover that it's losing traction or it's lost its traction.
Do we think that traction? People are talking about that. Sorry.
Pick one.
Let me just go. I'm really quick. I think that's usually true, but I think that it's so personality driven with him, and his following is so personality driven with him that I think there's a chance that it may not be that way. Yes, maybe an election cycle, it takes to sort of wind down, but it's hard to explain some of the following that he's had aside from personality.
I hate that we're even talking about him, even in the negative, I hate it. And I'm guilty of it. It permeates my thought process to the point I have these conversations, political conversations.
I think he becomes an afterthought in this abortion context.
I agree with that, but
Yeah.
but I agree with what you just said, Steve. But what you said, Frank, I don't want to talk about the former guy, but I don't think you can ignoring him personally. You can't ignore talking about what gave rise to the former guy and
Exactly.
That.
We'll talk about rearview mirror. I mean, why are we going to go litigate the past where we?
No, I'm not saying that. I agree with you.
But what do you mean?
Well, I mean, we have to address his constituency.
Yeah, that's called the Republican Party.
Well, we've been talking about that for a while. It goes back to things like dignity.
Yeah,
it's about coalescing the electorate to understand the things that will make them get out and vote to change things to change the things into something else.
Yeah, perhaps.
Nah, what's the other one? I mean, look, you could just say it's going to take a long time and it's going to be a generational thing and it'll eventually go away, like the Tea Party, which actually was part of where we are now. It was a building block of Trumpism.
Oh, I say it's a generational thing. I don't necessarily believe it'll go away. In a generation, we could all be that way.
Yeah,
that's a scary thing.
God.
Well, if abortion becomes the central point of the next election cycle, midterms and the general election, you just know how messy that is. I mean, we can talk all we want about, abortion rights, our women's rights, our health rights, and blah, 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 and it's one and the same. But as soon as you start seeing these, visuals of, aborted fetuses, it's like, oh, you can't even, people can't even get a conversation going when they see that. It's just it's so messy. It's so hard for both sides then to start to.
But there's 78% of the country is not in favor of outlawing abortion.
I know that, but
okay, well, that's
absolutely
profound.
True.
That's a
the
profound.
visuals get people completely crazy.
I understand. Even talking about it gets many of us crazy.
This has to be, it has to be that it's really, it's not about abortion. It really is about people controlling their own bodies. Like, men would not want the government to say that you can or can't do something that's going to be a lifetime of issues for you. So like, it has to just not be about abortion. It has to be destiny.
I think it goes to what Dennis was saying. It's about dignity. I agree with that.
It's about a bigger issue, and we need to find what that bigger issue is. It just occurred to me that during the Civil War, Lincoln didn't talk about the Civil War. I mean, in the Gettysburg Address, he talked about binding up the nation's wounds and about the great sacrifice people made, but he never talked about the Civil War as war. What he talked about was the bigger issue of a new birth of freedom. He did that quite a bit. And I think these times might be right for something like that, some big idea that everybody from whatever side of the spectrum you're on can glom onto and say, okay, I know what that means for me.
Is that what you meant by a Kennedy type of an individual who might come in and spur that sort of sense?
Yes, I think we need to leapfrog the issue to go back and relitigate Roe. It would be a catastrophic move by the Democrats. The Democrats need to go around it, over it, whatever. In that regard, I think the January 6th hearings could be fundamental for laying down the basis, the foundation of an argument about freedom and about what it means to self-govern, and why the riot of that day was so egregiously bad for the nation. And you could build from there.
Sometimes in hearings like that, an individual rises to the top and makes a mark that you didn't expect. I don't know who that person might be. I don't know if that would be the case, but it happens like that.
It reminds me of the interview Francis Fukuyama did early in the Ukraine invasion, when he talked about this is a moment where you get to define the importance of democracy. Now, he predicted that the outcome of the invasion would be good. I don't necessarily agree that's in any way inevitable, because lots of things could happen. But I think he's right to focus in on, the Putin view of the world, where the state is an oppressor, is very close to the Republican view of the state. Mm-hmm. The Democrats have always been accused of being the pro-state, the Republicans, little state. Actually, the opposite is true. The Republicans, as evidenced by their attempt to capture the state on January 6th, are a big state, heavy state, oppressive state. We meaning progressives, should be for individual freedom in the context of benevolent state, a state that gives freedom of choice to individuals.
I think labeling ourselves as progressives is a trap.
I
Yeah.
agree with that. Yeah, but I'm just using it as a shorthand.
So how
Well,
about
you could label the,
centrist?
you could
How
label
about
the.
centrist instead of progressive?
I think in the context of America, that centrist usually is a hodgepodge of nothingness. I mean, I'd rather not use either label and just figure out what we stand for.
And the Republicans are really the socialists.
Well, they're at least statist.
I, you know, I, I asked a question. Does anybody actually have an answer?
What's the question?
How about using the power of the middle of the country rather than the extremes of either the right or the left?
Well,
Talking to the wrong person with me, because I don't identify being in the middle. But I get your point. I do know what you're saying. You're saying
I
normal
think we have to
people have.
develop a platform though that the middle of the country can agree with and can support.
I think if you redefine it as you need to make the middle of America excited by your project, that I agree with.
Middle of America is primarily Republican right now.
I'm not so sure that that's true.
Well,
I
if you
mean,
look
the
at
numbers don't say that. They say that the Republican wing is 30%. You know, when you talk about this country being split down the middle, maybe politically, but in terms of actual sentiment, that's why I refer to the abortion debate. 76 or 78%. That's the middle talking. It's not the conservative. It's not the left.
I think you'd find, by the way, I think you'd find similar numbers for people who believe in racial equality, people who believe that gays should have the right to live together and marry. For most, if you present the issues properly framed, there's probably a majority for a lot of things like that.
Okay, do we,
Everyone has to-
Dennis, do you agree with that or disagree?
It puts me in mind of something that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was talking about with regard to the abortion issue. Right around the time that the Obergefell ruling came out, which was, I believe, the ruling that sanctified gay marriage. And she made the observation that we in America got to the Supreme Court too early with Roe, and that the conversation needed to happen among the people, among the state legislatures before Roe was decided. And if you look at what happened with gay marriage, the Supreme Court stayed out of it as long as it could. And so not too long ago, there were you could say, well, we got married in Vermont, and so our marriage is recognized in Vermont, but it's not recognized in Missouri. I don't know if that's true, but just a couple of things. We short-circuited that in Roe. We didn't have that opportunity, and as a consequence, people dug in. Instead of having their little discussions and each state coming up with their own formulation, it got imposed from the top down, and the left and the right both dug in, and we've had 50 years of very contentious debate over it. I think whatever we do going forward needs to use that as a lesson and understand the importance of civic involvement again. We're too out of touch with our local governments, and getting out every 4 years and voting for president is nice, but it's not going to move the needle.
So I just want to throw this in because I know everybody has to leave. One of the interesting things about this politically is the focus that seems to be emerging around not just the presidential, not just the Senate, the House, but also the governors. And the fact that the governors have this unique power of being able to veto the kind of legislation that we are horrified about. So that is a move in that direction that you're talking about, Dennis, isn't it?
Yeah, it really depends on the state. I mean, there's an article in the Times this morning about the 3 out of 6 Republican governors in New England, all staunchly in favor of abortion rights. And so, yeah, that's an example.
And it does hook up possibly with the business community as well. Frank, last thoughts about this?
I actually just think that your point about the governors is kind of well taken, but if you think about it, it feels like the governors who are making the most noise are the ones that are the most obstructionist. So again, it comes down to you need to be picking the right candidates for you to vote for, so that those opinions reflect how you feel. Whether
right, but as we saw, the bellwether, I think, will be in the midterms is going to be the governor's race in Georgia.
Yeah,
if Stacey Abrams can win, there's a leader for you right there.
I agree, and it is neck and neck right now, I think.
All right. Don't want to cut people off, but we have to. Tina and then Keith, or Keith and then Tina, which you pick.
I think Tina and Keith.
I'm just really happy that this discussion happened today, and I look forward to more of it. I hope that the Democrats can get it together. Yeah, my last thoughts are just hope.
Keith?
It's hard to be confident about the Democratic Party right now, but I'm probably more confident at any point in recent history, because I think they now have a subject they can be passionate about and win on.
Yeah, if they do it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the best part about this is that whatever happens, it's going to happen.
And well, by the way, if the Democrats don't fight and win quickly, this issue will hang over politics until it's resolved. It won't be one of those things where we resolve back. In a world where the Republic of Ireland, one of the most Catholic places on earth, has abortion rights, the idea that the US wouldn't have federal abortion rights is not tenable.
Mm. I want to thank those gangsters that have left the building, and
Michael Larkman.
Thank you. And we hope that things go well with whatever's going on with Michael's family. And I want to thank Dennis Pombriant.
Okay, nice to be here. Nice to do a Thursday.
I want to thank Keith Tier.
Well, it's my newsletter day, and I haven't even started it yet because of this, but still
right.
Enjoyed it.
Which is very difficult for me, because I love to be able to find out what it is I don't want to talk about in a nice, concise newsletter.
Welcome back, Keith.
Thanks to Frank Radis.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Steve and Tina. You know, it's funny. As you were saying that, Keith, I do my newsletter almost 24 hours a day. It's not like today is my newsletter day. It's like it starts the minute that I publish the next newsletter. Moments after I'm done with that, I've started working on the next newsletter.
Well, you have to think about the people, Frank, because those things that go to endless commercials and blurry text.
Yeah, I'm starting.
You've got to put them in a separate category.
Well, I'm not going to post any more stories from Rap Pro, for example, because I mean, you're not going to see those now. Interestingly enough, almost every Rap Pro story is also published by Variety. I have come to find it.
Well, there you go.
Requires my doing a little bit of searching, but anyway, so that's it, guys. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. This was a great discussion. I'm sorry that I that I even tried to divert it. That was my mistake.
No, it wasn't.
No,
No, you were right on target, and you were a sacrificial lamb for me.
no.
Yes, you're welcome.
Very tasty. Yes. Thanks to our producer and
Use
director,
mint
Tina
jelly.
Gillmor.
Yeah, great showing.
Here we go.
Yeah.
That's the applause for Tina.
Oh, wow.
And
I'm the only one who gets applause. Look at that. That's so nice.
there is no Santa Claus.
Lucy clap.
Ooh, look at that. Okay. Thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
See you guys.